PONS.
A recipe for murder.
Zbiór 13 opowiadań sensacyjnych w języku angielskim na poziomie od A1 do A2. Napisał
Dominic Butler.
Czyta
Guy Slocombe. A recipe for murder. The noisy kitchen at the back of Rosetta's bistro is hotter than usual this evening. The last of New York's summer sun adding to the heat from the ovens, making the small space seem like a sauna. Normally, Ricky Russo, the head chef, hates the heat, but not tonight. "I need some air," he shouts to his sous chef Max. "Watch that sauce, make sure it doesn't burn." "Yes, chef," says the taller younger man. "But we're pretty busy here, don't be too long." Ricky pushes open the back door and steps out into the fresh air of the alley in Hell's Kitchen. "Don't be too long," he says to himself angrily. Who does he think he is? He takes his pack of cigarettes from his pocket, pulls one out, and lights it. For 8 years, Ricky Russo has been the head chef at Rosetta's. Most people, however, seem to forget that really the restaurant is his. Sure, it's his wife's name on the sign outside, and okay, it was her parents who gave him the money to buy the building in the first place. But who is it that works 10 hours every day, every week? Who is it that sweats and bleeds and cries for this place? Rosetta? Yeah, right. All she does is eat the food he cooks and spend the money he makes. Her parents? All they do is complain that the restaurant isn't making enough money, while at the same time bringing their friends here 3 times a week and drinking as much free wine as possible. "They think you're an idiot, Ricky," he says, taking a cloth from his apron and wiping the sweat from his bald head. "They think they can walk all over you." Well, not anymore, he thinks, a thin smile appearing on his red face. Yes, this evening Ricky likes the heat. He likes that everyone in New York is sweating. He likes it because it means that no one notices how nervous he is. "It has to be tonight, Ricky," he says to himself. "Everything's ready. It's now or never." He moves back to the door and opens it a little, just enough to be able to see into the kitchen. Max is shouting orders at the kitchen staff like he owns the place. The waiters and waitresses are so busy that they don't have time to think about anything other than which plate is going to which table. And out in the restaurant, on the best table in the whole place, Rosetta and her parents are waiting for their main course. "Chef," Max shouts, "we need a little help in here." Ricky drops his cigarette, opens the door, and tries to seem calm. He hates Max as much as he hates Rosetta and her parents. "Okay, Max, what's next?" "We're ready for Rosetta's table." "Easy. 3 steaks and all the trimmings. The meat's nearly ready. Have you finished those mushrooms? You know they don't like them too cooked." Ricky is so nervous that he nearly laughs, but Max doesn't notice. This is it. If the sous chef looks too carefully at those horrible little mushrooms, he might see that something is wrong. "Come on, Max, get them in the pan." An angry expression appears on the taller man's face, but the sous chef says nothing. Without a word, he pushes the mushrooms into the hot oil. "Yes, that's right, Max. You cook the mushrooms. You always cook the mushrooms, and everyone knows it." 2 minutes, Max says. 2 minutes. Can it really be this easy? For the first time in months, Ricky actually starts to think that his plan might work. But of course it'll work. It's perfect. Ricky remembers the day he first thought of the idea. Rosetta was in the kitchen talking to Max, smiling at him in that way that Ricky hates. She said that Max should have more responsibilities in the restaurant. She said that Ricky works too hard, that Max could be head chef a couple of nights a week, and that maybe he could be the one who chooses all the food from the market. It's funny because that was also the first day that Ricky began to think that Rosetta and Max were having an affair. After that, he often saw them talking and smiling at each other. Every time Ricky entered the room, they stopped and looked at him, their expressions guilty and their eyes nervous. 1 minute, Max shouts, bringing Ricky back from his memories. He takes 3 plates and places them on the counter in front of him. Then, opening the oven, He removes the perfectly cooked steaks and places them on the plates to cool. Yes, this is it. After 3 months of thinking about it, this is it. The only difficult part was replacing the normal mushrooms, the ones that Max bought at the market, with the extremely poisonous ones that Ricky bought in the horrible little shop on the other side of the city. Death Cap Mushrooms. What a fantastic name, Ricky thinks. "Ready, chef," Max says, bringing the mushrooms and other vegetables to the counter and placing them carefully onto the plate. Sure, Ricky thinks, the police are going to ask a lot of questions in the next few weeks, but the plan is so simple that no one will ever be able to prove that Ricky is involved. Max buys the mushrooms, Max cooks the mushrooms, Max serves the mushrooms. Of course, he'll probably have to close the restaurant, but who cares? When Rosetta and her terrible parents are dead, all of their money will go to Ricky. Perfect. "Table 5, he shouts, and a waitress runs into the kitchen and picks up the plates. As he watches her move back into the kitchen, he finally lets himself laugh. "What's so funny, chef?" asks Max. Ricky turns to the other man and smiles. "Oh, nothing. Nothing, it's just something funny that I thought of." Something like you spending the rest of your life in jail, he thinks. The other man looks at him for a second, but soon returns to the pasta that he is cooking. Suddenly, feeling happier than he has in a long time, Ricky opens a bottle of brandy that he keeps in the kitchen for cooking, pours himself a glass, and starts to drink it. "Chef," says the same waitress a few minutes later, "your wife and her parents would like to see you." "What?" Ricky asks, the glass of brandy still in his hand. "They said that it would only take a minute." "Go on, Ricky, I'm okay in here for a moment," says Max. Suddenly, the head chef of Rosetta's Bistro does not feel so hot anymore. In fact, his whole body feels horribly cold. He looks at the waitress, then looks at Max too. They both have strange expressions on their faces, like they know something that he doesn't. Jesus, do they know about the mushrooms? About the plan? The kitchen seems very quiet now, the restaurant too. It seems like all of the staff are watching him from the corner of their eyes. "Go on, chef," Max says. "You know Rosetta doesn't like to be kept waiting." Slowly, Ricky Russo walks across the kitchen and pushes open the door to the restaurant. "Surprise!" 100 familiar voices shout. "What?" he finally manages to say, looking around at all the people who are smiling at him. Then Max is behind him, pushing him gently to the table where Rosetta and her parents are waiting for him. "Happy anniversary, darling," Rosetta says, putting her arms around him and placing a kiss on his cold cheek. "Anniversary? Yes, don't you remember? It's exactly 8 years since we opened the restaurant." Then Rosetta's father is standing next to him, a large smile on his face. "Well done, Ricky. We all know we don't say it enough, so we wanted to have this little party for you." Ricky turns around, suddenly realizing that he recognized every person in the room. "Max has been helping me to plan the whole thing. Isn't that nice of him?" Rosetta continues. "And guess what? Tomorrow we're going on holiday, a 3-month cruise. I've been saving a little money every month for the last couple of years." "You and Max? You mean a cruise?" "And that's not all," says Rosetta's father. "Let's forget about the last bit of money that you owe us. I'm going to send the paperwork to my solicitor tomorrow. When you get back from your holiday, this place is all yours." "Really? I can't believe it. I don't know what to say." "Oh, you don't need to say anything," said Rosetta's mother, who is still sitting at the table eating. "You just keep cooking excellent food like this. I don't know what your recipe is, but these mushrooms are excellent today. This restaurant is going to be famous, absolutely famous." And when Ricky Russo looks down at the empty plates on Rosetta's table, the only thing he can do is laugh. But it is a horrible, desperate kind of laugh. "Yes," he says. "Yes, I think that it will be." A very important appointment. The small blue car moves slowly along St. Stephen's Street, passes the famous church on its right, and finally parks next to the row of tall Georgian houses. Edinburgh is quiet today, and the cold winter rain makes the ancient city seem strangely dark and sinister. Inside the car, Detective Munro turns off the engine, looks out of the window, but does not open the door. Instead, she takes a cigarette from her purse and holds it in her right hand. She does not light the cigarette, but every now and again she puts it to her mouth and pretends to smoke it. After a few minutes, she puts the cigarette away, looks at herself in the car mirror, then opens the door. The rain outside is so heavy that as she runs to the red door of the nearest Georgian house, her long dark hair is soaked. She pulls the collar of her coat up to her face and knocks loudly on the door. Almost immediately, the door opens and a well-dressed gentleman with a silver beard smiles at her. "Come in, detective. Please, call me Sarah, Professor," she says, and moves into the hallway. The gentleman smiles. "Let me take your coat." Sarah takes off her coat and passes it to the older man. "It's very good of you to see me. I'm always very happy to help the police. Perhaps we can talk in my study." With another smile, the professor turns, walks along the hallway, and opens the door to his study. It is a medium-sized room with a large writing desk, 3 or 4 bookcases, 2 long leather sofas, a small coffee table, and several other pieces of elegant furniture. "Can I offer you a drink, Sarah? Are you allowed to drink when you're working?" "Well, actually, I'm not working today. Like I told you on the phone, I wanted to speak to you about some research that I'm doing. It's not official police business at the moment." "Then perhaps I can offer you a whiskey. It might make you feel a little warmer on this horrible winter day." "That would be nice. Thank you." The professor moves to a small table, opens a bottle of whiskey, and pours 2 glasses of scotch. "Make yourself comfortable," he says, and passes her a glass. Then, with another smile, he sits down on the sofa opposite her. "What can I help you with? Do you know what a cold case is, Professor?" "No, I don't think that I do." "Well, a cold case is when the police have tried to solve a crime, but they don't have enough evidence to find a culprit." "I understand. A few months ago, I found one of these cold cases that I thought was extremely interesting." "Really?" "Yes. Unfortunately, my boss doesn't agree with me. He thinks we have enough problems here in Edinburgh already." The professor laughs. "I think he might be correct. Are you allowed to tell me about the case?" "Not the details, but I can tell you some of the more general information." Sarah tastes her own whiskey, places the glass on the table, and begins. 2 years ago, a young woman from Edinburgh was found dead in the forest near Blackford Hill. Do you remember?" "Yes, I think I do," says the professor. "The woman's throat was cut, but her killer was never found." "That's right. It was strange because her friends and family couldn't tell us why she was in the forest. Well, a few months ago, while I was looking at cold cases, I found another similar murder. 4 years ago, another young woman was found dead in the trees at Abercon Park." The professor nods. "And this woman was killed in the same way? Her throat was cut?" "No, she was strangled. However, I noticed in the report that her friends and family also thought it was strange that she was in the park. She didn't live in that area. There was no reason for her to be there." "Well, I'm not sure I see the connection." Sarah laughs. "Exactly what my boss said, but there was something similar about the case. The women were the same age, they looked similar, they were in places where they normally never went, so I started to look at other cases." "And did you find anything?" Sarah reaches into her bag and pulls out a large folder. "Yes, I found 8 similar cases. In each case, a young woman was found in a quiet park or forest not far from Edinburgh. Each of them was killed in a different way, but there was always this strange fact that they normally never went to these places." The professor puts his glass down on the table and leans forward. "Yes, I can see now why you think this is interesting. So, how can I help you? Would you like me to suggest the kind of person who might commit a crime like this? Oh no, that's not really why I'm here. I know that you're a professor of psychology and that you could explain the mind of the killer to me, but I have another reason for coming here. The professor pauses. Really? Yes, you see, a few months ago I decided to quit smoking. A friend of mine suggested that I should try hypnosis. It was excellent. The doctor helped me to completely stop. Well, that is good news, but I don't see the connection with the cases. Well, it was while I was having hypnosis that I remembered something. And what was that? On the day the women died, each one of them stopped what they were doing. They turned to a friend or colleague and said that they had an important appointment that they must go to. I'm not sure that I understand. Lots of people have appointments that they forget. Yes, but Professor, each woman said exactly the same thing. I'm very sorry, but I have to go. I have a very important appointment. Those are the last words that each of these 8 women said. Don't you think that it's strange? The older man sits back in his seat, his glass of whiskey in his hand. I think that I'm beginning to understand. You think that each of those poor women were hypnotized. Exactly. I asked my doctor about it, but he said he didn't think that it was possible. He said that it is very difficult to make someone do what they don't want to do. Your doctor is correct. I know a little about hypnotism, and I completely agree. A little bit. Professor, I think that you're being modest. A lot of people have told me that you know more about hypnotism than anyone else in Edinburgh. That's why I'm here. The professor pauses again. You want me to tell you about hypnotism?